want to thank you guys for sharing your incredible story with me in the first place, and then for coming down to see it, which must have been just an extraordinarily strange experience.
Could not really.
Yeah, well, I suppose.
Being part of the kind of interview process for me was quite straightforward. It was all quite remote. We only met the first time today, or digitally, or such. I didn't know this environment. I'm not, I'm curious about the acting process in the, maybe mistrusting little way. But this is an extraordinary experience.
It must have been very strange seeing somebody else say your words. What was that? What was that like?
Yeah, really. I was really impressed with some of the accents, but I'm quite easily impressed. I remember there's a Mancunian drawl that perhaps we both share that's more obvious than I realised. But I quickly got into the idea that, I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Charmaine was coming. I mean, that's as bizarre as that sounds. That's exactly how it was. And I know you missed the first bit, so you didn't get that was the randomness of that selection. We were just talking about the idea that you could come tomorrow or whatever it's next, and I could choose somebody different, and it would be kind of it would be a different performance or a different experience. That's something I've never experienced in theatre before, and I'm very happy with that as a process. It's much more honest. It's much more. I guess this whole thing is about and honesty. What we talked about, what Cameron and I shared was very much about being honest.
Yeah.
I think.
And about listening.
There's something about this that makes it that way. It's much more. It's not just appropriate. It's something that's more than that. And I guess what art does, if that's what we would call it, and that's something that it should strive to do. And I think this definitely did that, which is quite unusual in my experience. Yeah. Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Cameron, what was it like for you, especially?
Scary.
Was it?
For me, 6 years ago when I first met Tim. Looking back now, I just sat there, I was watching as if it was someone else. Felt like I was watching a movie or something. And everything she was saying, I could feel it in my heart, it was burning. Even now, I'm still a bit nervous and taken back by it. So it was a very powerful piece. It was a powerful experience. And it's just made me just feel reassured that what I did and how I was then, I'm never going down that path again. Not a chance. So it was beautiful to watch. As much as it burns me inside, it's incredible.
When did you last see each other?
When we did so we did some press in a kind of showbiz way, which that's how it works out. Then we did so this that's 18 months. Is it more than this? So we did some those photographs that exist. So if you type my name into Google, it comes up with shit photographs of me and you.
They're both awkwardly like.
Just stand there for 5 minutes. Just hold that pose. It's just sort of a little bit peculiar, but I guess that's depressing. They do what they do, and it's never the actual stories. In a way, I suppose it's the point of the press is to put it out there, and that's what we did. And so these things then potentially these mad things happen on the basis of other people knowing about it. So despite the complete surrealness of that experience, it was we did stuff with Evening News. We did some interviews earlier in the day with the BBC, didn't we, on the North West News, which regional news is a kind of big deal. It's sort of thing. And then we did a conference in the probation office that Susie organised, which was significantly more terrifying
was it?
Any of the things that we've done previously. Because we were sat in a room with, I don't really know who was there.
Magistrates, other probation staff, young offenders. There was a nice story though that Tim they both arrived at the probation office, and Tim had come in not knowing anybody at all in the building, and he as only Tim can do, one of the first things he said to this invited audience was, actually, I didn't know anybody at all here tonight. He said, actually, it was really nice to see a familiar face.
But that was, you know, there was a. This is most peculiar. But what has precipitated from that event is now way beyond what could possibly have been imagined, or even scripted, or any of that stuff. Somebody said to me, I was talking to somebody yesterday about coming here today, so you couldn't script it. I was like, yeah. And so, you know, I don't know, there's a set against the other story. There's not a triviality, but it seems that's an extraordinary story. To have lost a child is something that I think is I can't begin to think about where you start with. And that's talking to your cast about performing that in front of those particular people. And I think that not just for the people themselves, but for the cast, that is probably something you might not forget, I think, in terms of a professional experience. That's
the impact may have been more significant, but that's not to underestimate what you've both done, which I think is quite extraordinary, which is why we wanted to tell this story alongside those. I think it's a truly incredible story. And I'm going to turn it out to the audience, because I'm sure everyone has a lot of questions soon. But I think we both wanted to ask just a little bit more about that meeting, about what actually happened, and I'm sure, Susie, you can contribute to this as well. What happened in that meeting that led to this? What was the transformative process that took place? Can you describe it in a bit more detail?
So, I think for me there was the letter that Cameron wrote was immediately genuine. I'd assumed, and I think partly maybe the restorative justice process. In the play it talks about how initially I was reticent, and that reticence came through the diction of the person that asked me, who was the investigating officer of the police. And the way it was phrased was very much kind of tagged on to the conversation, do you want to take this box? And it was so soon after the event, I was like, oh, it almost seemed like it would benefit, it would benefit to say, well, I asked, and it's fine. And I'm not denigrating what they did in any way, shape or form, but it didn't come from the heart. The question wasn't genuine. And it seemed, well, I'm not being beforehand I understood the concept of restorative justice and was a supporter of the process. That idea, what drove me to consider it was when I was Cameron's age, when Cameron was sent to prison, that I went to college, and that was a very formative experience in my life. So the best friends I have now, the subject I love, and mostly the career I have was based out of the formative experiences I had at that time. And certainly if Cameron had a similar experience whilst in prison, then of course that was never going to end. Well, I'm not assuming what might happen, but the potential is that doesn't work as a process. And the chance to be involved in, not in any kind of pretentious or, kind of ego-driven way, was just to maybe see if that actually worked. And I think only through Cameron's candidness was that possible. I first needed to know that there was nothing in it other than an altruistic sense of wanting to be, penitent. And I think in the first 3 or 4 lines of his letter, it was very, very obvious that this had not been scripted by somebody else. He was not ticking boxes, and it was a very, very genuine, heartfelt, emotive piece of communication. And I think that sold him, I think, at that stage.
And when did you first hear about it, Cameron? Was it through Susie, or did you ever?
No, it was in prison for me. When I first went to prison, it wasn't on my conditions or anything that I had to meet my victim and apologise to him. But I heard about this course called Restorative Justice, but in some prisons they call it Sycamore Tree. And I did want to do it. First I was contemplating on it, but first, I'm not going to lie, when I first went into prison, at this point I've still not felt no guilt. I wasn't feeling no remorse, I wasn't thinking about what I've done. It's after being a couple of months into prison and seeing how all my so-called friends drifted away, everyone's disappeared, and the only people that were there was my family. And I'm not going to lie, at first I was selfish and I was thinking about myself. I missed my family, I missed this, I missed that. And then when I realised that it was my mother and my father was the only two people that genuinely loved me and genuinely supported me, even though I didn't appreciate it before I went in, I started thinking about that picture of Tim, like you heard the actor say. And I was thinking about the picture for weeks, and it was like a nightmare. Every few days it'd bob up into my head, thinking, oh shit, what have I done? What have I done? And I was thinking about it for a long time before I've gone to the prison officers and asked them, can I do this course? I want to meet my victim. And when the ball started rolling on me, when they put me onto the course, it was like a tick in the box exercise in prison. It wasn't genuine. I didn't feel it. I just had to do some forms and do a lot of diagrams, say who's been affected, not just Tim, but his family, the community, my family. And it was just like doing a piece of coursework or something. That's how I felt, like just doing little drawings and writing a little letter and then passing it through. And it wasn't enough. Like, I've done it, I've got my little certificate for it, and it wasn't enough. And I had to wait I think it was 8 months until I was being released. So when I got released, it was still playing on my head, and I was thinking, you know what, I need to say sorry. It's not come from the heart. So that's when I've contacted my probation officer at the time, and they got in touch with Susie, who's the head of the Restorative Justice Programme. And when she come to meet me, she's not just said, yeah, we'll get you meeting Tim. She's obviously assessed me first to see if I'm being genuine or if it's something that I'm just doing for the sake of it. And she's first got me to write a letter. She said, if you was going to write him a letter, keeping it brief and simple, what would you say? So she gave me until however long I needed. I just wrote it up for her within the next week and then passed it forward to her, and she asked me if it was okay to pass it forward to Tim. And then obviously the ball got rolling from there, and as soon as she said that Tim's agreed to meeting up, I can't explain how I felt. I was doing it every single day. As soon as the day came, I was going to back out, I weren't going to go. Everyone was telling me just do it, and I weren't going to go, but I knew it was something I had to do. Because for me, it's like changing my life. It's not been changed my life just like that. It's been a step at a time. So to close that last chapter of my life, all the people I was hanging around with, all the choices I was making, all the things I was doing, it was me. It weren't the people that I was around. I chose to be around them. I chose to live like that. I chose to smoke drugs. I chose to sell it. I chose to beat him up. It weren't no one else's choice. It was mine. And I understood that then. So to close that chapter of my life and move forward as in being a civilised person, working, thinking about getting married, having kids, being a normal person, I had to say sorry to him. So I went through with it, and it was powerful, wasn't it?
Still is.
Yeah, it still is now watching him. I'm scared now speaking about it. It feels like it was someone else, but I know it's me, so it's just hard to just speak about.
Susie, I'm really curious about it from your perspective. I mean, how was it all for you, and how rare is this?
I mean, seeing it tonight, it was like Tim and Cameron were there. The actors absolutely nailed it. The mannerisms, the accents, everything about it was just really convincing, credible. I don't know if you agree with that, but for me, knowing the two of you, it was like seeing you both there. In terms of how I mean, I've done 20 face-to-face conferences now over the last kind of 2.5 years, and this is my pièce de résistance. And I've done some serious ones. I've dealt with a murder case, and then I've done some sort of at the other end of the scale which have had less impact on the victims. But there's something about this case just stands out, and there is something, it has a momentum of its own now. It seems to keep on going in different ways. It's, you know, and none of us imagined this. It was, I mean, having had the actual face-to-face conference, that in itself was really powerful. I mean, everybody was in tears at the time, and you don't mind me quoting, do you? Tim talked at great length to start off with about his life and how, what a good life he'd had, and you know, this idea of going to college, doing something that he loved, and just feeling that he'd had this privileged life, and in a way had taken it for granted to some extent. And what he said he wanted that. For Cameron, he wanted Cameron to have had that experience, and if he could do anything to help Cameron achieve that he would do. And then the line that I will never forget was, he said, you know, I'm not a religious man, but if I were, I would give you my blessing. And that was the point where, I mean, even now, it chokes me. But everybody else in the room crumpled at that point, and I had to sort of pinch myself, because I thought, you can't cry, you've got to hold it all together. And from that, it was Restorative Justice Week, so we met in the June, the conference was in the June. Every year there's a Restorative Justice Week in November, and Probation decided in Manchester this was that they wanted to put something on. And I said, let me see if I can persuade Tim and Cameron to come and give a talk. So that was kind of the next thing that happened. But that also happened to coincide with the day that the BBC wanted to film them and the Manchester Evening News wanted to do so. So it was a really heavy day.
The video's still online now as well.
Is it? I mean, it was a really big day for these two to come into probation to an invited audience, not knowing really who they were going to meet. The BBC were there during the day, wielding great big furry mics around and getting them to do this pose, and then the Manchester Evening News. So it was just a really full-on day. And then I think we all sort of thought after that probably things would sort of calm down and it would all die down. And it hasn't done, because then I got a call from you saying, Susie, I want to write, I heard that you do restorative justice and I'd like to write a claim. Do you have a case that you think might be appropriate? And I thought, yeah, I have. So again, asked two of you if you were happy with that, and here we are, another year later. And the next thing is that there's a film company who want to do a short film for the One Show about this particular case. So it has this momentum, it just keeps going. And I believe that there's a woman in America who is interested in taking this play over to America. I don't know where that's up to.
Yeah, I mean, just the response of people who come to see it, I think, because everybody knows. You have to say no. No, I don't know. But, you know.
Broadway! Bad cats out.
I mean, we don't know.
Tom Hanks.
But people, I've never seen anything like it. I don't think either of us have. The way that audiences come out of this, how touched and inspired they feel by it, and that's because it's real. You said that, didn't you, Matt? I'm seeing these yeah. I think we should, yes, let's turn it out to the audience. Any questions?
How long that June conference, which you just talked about, how long did it last?
Probably only an hour. I don't think it was much more than an hour, was it?
Was it
Probably felt like
was it not 7 weeks?
7 hours.
Well, I was struck by one of the other cases that the key meeting lasted for 4 hours. It was in the script.
I think
the initial meeting.
And I just wondered whether it takes a long time.
When Cameron and I met for the very first time, well, technically for the second time, I suppose. Not as a gag, but in reality, it was. I don't know. It was a few hours. It felt like. What was interesting was there were lots of people in the room. I think there must have been 8 or 9 people, maybe. Different probation officers, people that I did jobs that I've never even heard of, that were involved in I don't know what they were involved in. They were involved in there for all the right reasons. They weren't, they weren't pretenders or walking about. But it was nobody said anything other than Susie and myself and Cameron. And I wouldn't recognise any of those people if I saw them again today, because none of them were relevant in that sense. It was what struck me as, I think, one of the things that stands out the most from that initial experience was Cameron just looked at me all the time, not wavering, not anything. Like you talked about the kind of glass corridor thing. There were people walking past all the time. He was sat facing that. It could easily have been distracted, but he wasn't, because he was so completely genuine in what he was saying, and it was utterly and completely focused at me. And you can't not pay attention when someone's looking you directly in the eye and they're talking about things that are, you know, extraordinarily difficult or personal, or, you know, in a lot of cases don't put them in the best light. The sort of things you wouldn't want to necessarily talk about in public. I've never experienced anything like it. That's the sort of thing that I will happily carry around for the rest of my days, because it's an extraordinarily powerful thing to have another human being communicating with you in that way. And I think it felt like weeks, it could have been minutes, it sort of doesn't matter really. It lives on and will continue to live.
Why were there so many people in the room?
Security in case Tim beat me up.
Yeah.
I didn't actually want to criticise Tim, but there weren't that many people in the room. No, there really weren't. There was me. There was Cameron's probation officer as an observer, and then there was one other person. I criticise you. I didn't feel appropriate, but yeah, there were very few people in the room, but it obviously felt. I guess it just.
There's 4,000 here tonight.
Yeah.
Within the restorative justice situation, is it unusual for Cameron to ask, as opposed to the victim to ask to see each other?
Because I'm in probation, the referrals I get are generally from offender. Occasionally I'll get a referral from victim support, or from within probation we've got victim liaison officers, so anyone sentenced to more than a year would get some support from the probation service, so I might get a referral that way, but most of the cases I deal with start off with the offender.
Yes.
But Cameron, when you were in, from your experience inside, how was what you were doing received by other prisoners, and was there much appetite to do the same kind of thing, or was it kind of not really looked like something that
Not really, because for me personally, there was a lot of people doing the course inside, but it wasn't exactly like the genuine part. Like the genuine side come from home. When I come home, and it's like I've not said sorry to him yet personally, so I still was hanging on to it. I still wanted to say sorry. But in prison, there's a lot of people doing the course, but it's just like a tick box exercise. They're just doing it for the sake of it, or it might be on their sentence plan, or they've just seen someone else do it, so they want to do it, or it gets them out the cells for a day. Because most prisons, 23-hour bang up, you're in your cell like 23 hours a day. You get let out to get your food, quick phone call, quick shower, back in your cells. Unless Monday to Friday there's something called a workout, so it's like going to work or going to an education class or something. But apart from that, you're in your cell 23 hours a day. So some people were just doing it to get out the cells. But I did meet two lads. I was in prison for about nearly 2 years. So in the time I was there was only two lads that were genuine about doing the course, and they actually meant what they wanted to do. And I think for most people on our side is you've got to be willing to do it yourself in your head, not just someone saying come and do this, or why do you want to do it. If you want to change, you're going to change, and then if you change, you will feel that guilt. And that's what basically happens. I didn't meet many people. I've only met a couple of people that genuinely want to do it. One was a murderer. He killed someone, but obviously he couldn't really apologise to his victim or the family. And the other one was in for GBH.
Got from people that you know when you said you were going to do this, when you were really going to go?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I first met him, there was quite a lot of people supporting him, but as soon as they heard that, like my co-defendants, the people that I was involved with in the crime, when they heard I was doing it, they backed off. They didn't really want to speak to me no more. It's like, I don't know, it's like, I felt as if they felt like I was trying to show them up or something. But I wasn't doing it for that, I was doing it because I genuinely wanted to say sorry. I didn't say to them, why don't you guys come and say sorry or anything like that. I was showing them my example, like, we've done the wrong thing here, guys, come on, I should say sorry. But they all just backed off from me, hardly speak to me, no. They don't hardly speak to me, if they see me, they're a bit two-faced. They'll smile at my face and behind my back they'll go and say horrible things. But they completely backed off when they found out I was doing this. And then as soon as it got put on the BBC North West News and it was on obviously TV screens, none of them wanted to speak to me anymore. Any friends that I met in prison or any people that are like a bit street, they wouldn't want to speak to me. They're seeing that change, but to be honest, I was happy with that. It made me realise, you know what, I've changed, I'm a nice one. But at first it felt a bit awkward, like why are they being a bit off with me? But it's because I was doing the right thing and they didn't exactly like that. They didn't want to do it themselves.
Does that mean that they are continuing on the way they did before when you were...
Yeah, some people, I've seen them go still on the same path. I've seen people get worse. There's people that were only going out beating people up and mugging them. Now they're breaking into people's houses, taking the car keys, robbing the houses. They're selling drugs, Class A's, Class B's, whatever. There's people that I see that I was involved with before, they're still exactly the same to this day. And the way I see it is, I was doing that when I was a teenager, why do I want to do that when I'm an adult? It's quite embarrassing if you think about it. But they're all like 20 odd, 30 and they're still doing the same things that we was doing when we was teenagers. But
how do you make sense of that?
Pardon?
How do you make sense
I can't. I don't understand. It's like, some of them have even got kids and stuff. It's like, what you playing at? One of the guys that was involved in, he's had a baby recently, and he's still smoking weed, he's still sniffing cocaine, he's still selling it, he's still going out beating people up for no reason, going to clubs with knives and stuff. It's like, what are you doing? But I don't really associate with people like that anymore. I've tried to speak to them saying, look, come on, it's not worth it, it's not worth it, it's not worth it. Just get a job, do this, do that. But to them it sounds like I'm preaching. Because I remember when I was that age, and when my parents used to say to me, or people that used to care about me, or elders, I never used to listen. It was straight in this ear and out the other. I just thought, yap, yap, yap. That's how I used to feel. Because when you're in a lifestyle like that, you just don't want to listen to the good things. When people are giving you good advice, you genuinely don't want to listen. Out of respect, if it's your dad or you like a neighbour or someone, you'd listen, but it's like I said, it's straight in one ear and out the other. You don't want to listen to anything good. As soon as you're around bad company again, you feel like you can open up.
And would that not come from something? Would that coming from someone like you, not carrying more weight than where it come from someone else? So if you were to present that scenario to them, would they not take that on board more because it's coming from someone
who's been there?
Yeah.
People my age, I've noticed it's when they get to a certain age, I've seen like, I think past 16 and they don't want to listen. But I've realised the younger kids do want to listen. I've been asked to go to a couple of youth clubs and, you know, where there's naughty kids and give them a bit of a talk. They've listened to me more than speaking to someone my age or speaking to someone who's older. I don't know what it is, but it's like when I spoke to anyone over 18, they don't want to listen to me. They think that I'm preaching, that's what they all say, or he's talking a load of crap. Or they listen to me, and then as soon as I've gone, they all stay away from me. But the young kids, they listen. Because when I tell them in depth, right, this is what I did, this is the consequences, you do it if you want, be aware this might happen to you. How would you feel if it was your mum? How would you feel if it was your dad? That was the wake-up call for me, because I thought, the night when I hit him, I still remember it now. I can still see it in my head how violent, and it was a really powerful blow. Tim didn't know what was going on. He didn't have a clue what was going on that night. And I still remember that blow, and I remember how much force I put into that swing. Like the actor mentioned, I hit his face like he was an object. It was really bad. Just because I was feeling insecure and having an argument with my ex-girlfriend for no reason, and I knew I was in the wrong, but I couldn't accept it. So I took out the only person I could see on the street, which was Tim. And knowing that, and then saying it to young kids now, they feel it and they listen. So when I speak to like my nieces and nephews, when I speak to them, they listen to me. So I'm hoping that they grow up now being aware of like this is a path, because I don't tell people don't do this, don't do that, because my parents did that with me when I was young. Don't do this, don't do that, and it made me not listen on purpose, because it's like when someone forces me, like it's like I feel like I'm being suffocated, and I want to do anything just to get them off. So I didn't listen. So what I do now, if I speak to someone younger than me, I'll tell them, if you do this, this is what can happen. But if you do that, that's what can happen. You decide which path you want to take. But like I mentioned, if I speak to anyone over 18, they don't really listen to me. They don't want to. It's just the younger generations do listen, but they're more important anyway, aren't they?
Do you find that, Susie, that it gets harder as people get older?
I think with young male offenders, you know, it's sort of known that sort of through the teens up till mid to late 20s, and then they tend to meet a woman usually, and that seems to be a turning point. And you see it in all the sort of the figures, the offending rates drop off after men get to sort of in their mid to late 20s. I don't know if anybody ever listens to, really, when you're in your teens, I don't know if anyone listens to anyone else though, do they? You just tend to go ahead and do your own thing. I think you're right in what you're saying, as much as, when you start telling people what to do, you just close off. Yeah. But if you explain, you have choices in life, and there are consequences. For everything that you do, there are consequences. And hopefully, if a handful of people have listened to what you've said and have appreciated your honesty in talking about it, and it's maybe made them think before they go down one route, then you've achieved something good, haven't you? Yeah.
How do you think, when you were that age, you'd have responded to watching this? I wonder. That's the question.
If I was still the person that was then, and I watched this, do you want me to be honest? I wouldn't have cared. I would have thought the actor, what he did, I would have called him a pussy. Why are you being a bitch for? That's the mentality you have. It sounds horrible and inhumane, but it's the truth. That's how people think like that. I've seen it, and there's still people like that now. Go out of here, you'll probably see a couple of people who have that mentality. You get 12-year-olds nowadays that carry knives, and they don't care. They literally don't care. I remember when I was younger, and obviously I was a bit of a little shit. If I was walking down the street and I seen someone that was a bit older than me, and I was smoking weed or doing something that I shouldn't be doing, I'd still have a bit of respect, even though I was a little cunt. I'd still hide display, and I'd still acknowledge it. If I walk down the street nowadays, the kids are just, they don't care. They're smoking in front of you. What are you looking at? Giving me the fingers. You little shit. You feel like slapping them, but you can't.
Sorry. Do you think the attitude has changed?
Yes,
since you?
Very much. When I first come out of prison, it was totally different. Because in that 2 years, like before I went in prison, everyone was quite civilised and speaking genuine English and stuff. And when I come home, everyone's talking slang. Even people in college and university are speaking safe, bro, and all this ghetto talk and all this slang. And I was just thinking, what are you doing? You're embarrassing yourself.
So by what you think, does that not mean that for people to change, they have to lose everything? If it took recognising the victim's family by realising that your family would be anything less standing after you lost all your friends and all those facades.
Not necessarily losing everything. It's more of stepping out from your own shoes and looking at it from the outside. I couldn't see it first. You know, when I was inside, people would say, "Why are you doing that for? Why are you hanging around with them? What are you doing this for? Don't do this, don't do that." Because I was so deep into the situation, I couldn't step out my own shoes and see it from the outside. But obviously going to prison, I was taken away from the environment. I was taken away from the type of people I was associating with. So when I looked back at my life and I seen what I was doing and the choices I was making, the things that I was thinking, I realised it was me. I was choosing to do that. I couldn't see the bigger picture. So it weren't the fact that I lost everything, it's more of the fact that I got pulled away from my situation and I looked at it from the outside.
But then with the photos being so convenient, if that was what you just said was the only thing, the photo would still have done it.
No, that photo was the thing that hit me inside more. That's what I felt it. Obviously I could see it from the outside, but thinking of Tim's family picture was the thing that hurt me inside, and obviously that's where my guilt and my remorse started growing. So.
How much do you think that being into drugs influenced your way of behaving when you were violent, and then maybe not having access to drugs when you were in prison influenced your desire for kind of like for apologising? I don't know if you did have access to drugs in prison, but I'm assuming. I mean, how much do you think being into drugs or maybe choosing not to be into drugs into prison, how much do you think that factor?
No, it's a good question. Obviously, taking drugs, it escalates. At first, when I first started, I started smoking weed about 14, 15, started around there because I had family problems. I was kicked out, I was homeless. So I started smoking weed. At first, you don't think of it, it's just a spliff every now and again, every few nights. But when you start having it every day, before you know it, 6 months gone, 12 months has gone, 2 years have gone, and you're hooked on it. And it's not exactly an addiction, it's more of a habit. So people think they're addicted to it, but you're not. It's all in your mind. It was more of the fact that it was a habit, going out at certain times, going with my friends. But when I was smoking the weed and then started sniffing a bit of cocaine, I didn't realise what it was doing to me on the long run. So on the short term, I might have had an argument with my ex, and then I just couldn't be bothered thinking about the headache, and I couldn't be bothered with thinking about none of my family speaking to me. I'm lonely, I'm still in a hostel on my own, doing my own shopping, I've got to go to school, and I just had a lot of pressure in my life. Because I didn't want to think about the pressure, I'd smoke the weed, I'd sniff the coke, and then I'd feel relaxed for that night. I'd feel relaxed, then I'd wake up in the morning and the problems are still there, so I'd do it again. And then I'd try and get away from it again. I wasn't like an alcoholic when they're trying to drink all the time. I couldn't get away from it. So like you said, that was part of it. When I went to prison, I was taken away from the drugs. I wasn't around the drugs. It wasn't easy to get a spliff in prison. It was about £10. I was feeling for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to lie. At first, I was dying for it. I felt like I was a crackhead or something. But I couldn't get access to it until obviously a few months into it. You start making friends with people, and then I started smoking a little bit of weed. Then obviously when I started meeting the librarians, and I stopped doing it. But it wasn't easy to get access to drugs. So when I was not getting the drugs, that's when everything was coming into my head now, and I was pulled away from the situation. I was seeing it more clearly. I was thinking, oh shit, why is that happening? Oh my god, why have I done that? Why have I done this? And I was questioning myself then. But before, when I was on drugs, I wasn't questioning myself. I didn't care. But when I had a clear head, yeah, I did.
So are you saying that prison works, or it works for you?
Prison works for you if you want it to work for you. That's how it is. It's either you see it as a punishment or you see it as a reality check. Go there, have a break, sort your head out, change your life. Or go there, think, oh, it's a punishment, feel sorry for yourself, and then get mixed in with the wrong people. For me, it was a reality check. So I give full credit to the justice system. The prison services, spot on. If you go in there with the mentality thinking you're a bit of a big man, then yeah, you're going to have a hard time, you're going to attract trouble, the prison office, the guards are going to give you a hard time. Then yeah, they're going to do the job. They've got to be firm. Think about it, if you was a prison officer and you're full of murderers and thieves and stuff, you've got to be tough, haven't you? So, but for me, wanting to change, they was very nice to me. They was very supportive, putting me on courses, everything I wanted to do, they supported me. So the prison service definitely works. Probation service definitely works. Only if you want it to. It just comes down to the individuals.
It's not just a school, then?
No.
I think we've got time for, just aware of the time, we've probably got time for one more question.
Can I ask a
These last two, yeah.
Sounds as if you were clearly a rebel, but you came from a loving and united family. Am I right there? Supposing you were a rebel and you didn't have that support, what chances would he have in that situation of restoring his life?
So if you didn't have family supporting you, as you said, family came and they were the only ones there.
Yeah,
if you were someone without that.
No, what is for me growing up is my dad was quite harsh. He's old school. He was born in Bangladesh, so he had a bit of a traditional mentality. So raising us, he was very strict. My mum was the loving one, and my mum was very soft. But my dad was always, just always shouting. I never had a bond with my dad growing up. I was never able to speak to him. I never had that love and comfort I needed as a child. So I found it with my friends at school, and then obviously started drifting into this lifestyle of doing what he didn't like and rebelling against it. But my mum was the reason why I was still standing. But when I went to prison, my dad changed. Totally changed. It was weird. It was really strange how much he would give me shit all the time and not speak to me. So all of a sudden, every time I rang, he would always wanted to speak to me. His tone was very loving and not very harsh and blunt. He totally changed. And then I started realising, like, no one else is writing letters back to me, none of my friends. And no one's answering the phone calls. The only people that's answering the phone calls and coming to see me writing the letters was my mum, dad, my brothers and sisters. So obviously it started sinking in.
And that's what made you think of Tim and his family.
Yeah, and then the picture I seen of him and his family.
One final question.
So, I'm going to be cheeky. So first I want to say an amazing thank you to all the actors and to the production, because I actually think it's been absolutely incredible this evening and brought to life, I guess, a situation that many of us that came this evening didn't really understand. So thank you very much for all your efforts. Honesty and brave dialogue that you guys have had. I think that's just incredible. So I guess my question is actually really to Tim and to Susie. So Tim, I guess, as you were I guess a victim, which is the word I use. I guess is a big word, but you kind of didn't intentionally play a part in the story. And so how, in terms of the dialogue that you've had, this situation that you've had even being in the production, how has that helped you as an individual? And I guess, Susie, from your perspective,